Okay, welcome everybody to today's webinar sponsored by Keystone Health Club. Today we're going to talk about stress and how you can use exercise to manage stress. My name is Dr. Marc Tinsley, and I am a speaker, writer, consultant, and coach. I work with organizations who want to gain a competitive advantage by creating an environment that promotes vitality, increases energy, and enhances the capacity for their employees to function at their best. This is a key to improving productivity, maximizing performance, and achieving excellence. One of the biggest obstacles to being lively and enthusiastic is stress. Stress management workshops, in fact, are by far the most common reason that organizations hire me to speak. In fact, I see on the list quite a few of you who are attending this webinar have heard me speak where you work, and I'm glad to see that you're here continuing to learn how you can take better care of yourself and be more effective at what you do for a living. Now, Keystone Health Club, who's sponsoring our webinar today, is a neighborhood gym with all the amenities you'd expect to find in larger gyms. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned athlete, their helpful staff is trained to assist you in effectively reaching your goals. Keystone Health Club provides the latest in cardiovascular and weight training equipment, as well as a full schedule of fitness classes. The trainers at Keystone Health Club are certified fitness professionals and nice people. They're available to assist you in all aspects of your training program. Their personal and friendly approach always ensures that you'll receive the attention and customized exercise programs that you've come to expect from your local gym. Now, what I hope to accomplish today is to give you a little bit of information about stress and how it affects your body and your mind, and help you understand that there's a connection between what you do as far as all of the things you do in taking care of yourself, but especially exercise and how that ties into relieving and managing stress. We'll also learn why exercise should be part of any stress management and wellness program, and we'll talk about some of the best exercises that you can do for managing stress. Now, in my practice, not only is it a common thing that companies hire me to speak about, but a lot of my patients would ask me about stress management and helping them to control stress, and they'd come in and tell me all of the different things that they had tried, from biofeedback to meditation to medication. And they would claim they had tried everything. And a lot of times I would ask them, well, what about exercise? And they would look at me sometimes with a blank stare on their face and kind of be surprised that they hadn't thought of that. And I know that we say that, you know, it seems like exercise is the answer to everything, but it really is a lot of the time. There's a lot of benefits to taking care of yourself and having a fitness program that includes all different types of exercise. And one of the benefits of that is being better able to manage stress. So this is something, like I said, we want to talk about today and help you understand that, again, when we experience stress, you know, it affects everybody. Every day, everybody is affected by stress. We actually need stress to survive, but if we have too much of it, it can be a drain on our energy, it can affect our body, it can affect our moods, it can affect our relationships, and it can even lead to illness or possibly even death. So managing stress is very important. And while many people, most people in fact, agree that it's very important to manage stress, a lot of people believe that the level of stress that they experience is increasing on a regular basis. They claim that it interferes with their daily lives at work and at home. It causes physical, emotional, and cognitive symptoms. And they claim that they're doing a poor job of managing it, even though they're trying. So more and more people are turning to exercise as an effective way to manage stress and stay healthy and happy. Now, when I speak about stress, I'm very careful not to speak about eliminating stress. Eliminating stress is not possible. Stress is inevitable. We can reduce it, we can manage it, but we cannot eliminate it. It's part of life. In fact, the only people who have no stress in their life have no life. They're dead. Because stress is what happens to us. It's the conditions, situations, or events that disrupt our balance. Those are things we call stressors, and they disrupt our balance or challenge or even overload our ability to deal with them. And the stress response is what happens, is how our body physiologically reacts to this perceived threat. And a series of changes occur. We call it the fight or flight mechanism. And it's really, again, the two options when we encounter danger in our past. These were the two options we had. We could either fight back and defend ourselves, or we could run away to someplace where it was safety. And to allow us to do that most effectively, we've been created with a fantastic system that allows our body to do that without us even thinking about it. The sympathetic nervous system is a part of our nervous system that mediates this response and prepares our body to either fight or flee, and makes that possible so that we can do that to the best of our ability. So when this happens, we get a sudden burst of energy and strength, and that's the fight or flight reaction. Our heart rate increases, our digestion slows, our pupils dilate. Hormones like adrenaline and cortisol are pumped into the bloodstream, and the blood is pushed from the smaller muscles to the larger muscles that we're going to need to, again, either run away or fight back. So if you look at this chart that's on the screen, you'll see how this is broken down and how the sympathetic nervous system has a very specific role and goes to those different organs to create a response. I mean, even the salivary glands, you probably have experienced at times where you're nervous that you get a dry mouth, because there's no need, if you're afraid, again, in our past, historically, if we were being chased by something, we weren't going to be eating. We were going to be running away or fighting back. So there was no need to digest food, and that's why your mouth dries up. That's why your heart pounds. That's why your hands get cold and shake, because the muscles, you're not going to be needing to do any fine motor tasks. You're actually going to have to, again, use the bigger muscles, so that because there's a lack of blood flow or a decreased blood flow to the fingers, like I said, sometimes our hands get cold and even shake when we're nervous. So this is all, again, in response to the sympathetic nervous system. Now, when we have this sympathetic response, or this stress response or stress reaction, it's supposed to be followed by a relaxation response, where all of those systems return to normal. Now, this is innervated by the parasympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system, just like the sympathetic nervous system, has a specific role, and it happens naturally following an acute stress when that threat goes away. So you'll see on this chart there, it just allows everything to respond back to normal and allows you to, be able to digest your food, be able to do some of the things that we couldn't do when we had that acute stress. Now, when I talk about acute stress, this is what I'm talking about here. I mean, again, in our forefathers, and again, historically, these are the challenges that they came up against. If you met a lion or a bear or a saber-toothed tiger, that threat wasn't going to last very long, because you were either going to be eaten or you were going to get to safety, but you better do it quickly. So it wasn't going to be something that went on for very, very long. And so this stress response is really designed to only last for a few seconds or minutes, and that's why we call it an acute stress. It's not a system that is supposed to be put into use for hours, days, or even weeks. But unfortunately, that's what we're experiencing now with what we call chronic stress. Our jobs, bills, anything that we have now tends to be longer and drawn out. So that perceived threat that we have, whatever's causing us stress and tension, is lingering. And it's going on, like I said, more than minutes or seconds, but it's going on for hours, days, and like even weeks. And so this relaxation response doesn't happen automatically. We have to induce it. We have to kind of reboot our system and intentionally try to engage that parasympathetic nervous system to calm those different systems down, so that we can relax and we can overcome that effect of all of those things that happen. So if you remember those charts, and it makes sense why we experience some of the symptoms of stress. And there's various symptoms that we experience when we have stress, and we can break them down into physical, emotional, and cognitive. So you can actually, if you like, enter into the chat box any symptoms that you can think of as far as a physical. When you think of stress, what types of physical symptoms do you associate? Do you think of when we talk about stress? Like I said, feel free to enter into the chat box there. We'll see things like, again, I mentioned before, hands shaking, tremoring, stuttering, a dry mouth. We have, again, things like fatigue, grinding teeth. And then emotionally, we start to see things like, frustration, short-tempered. We start to see things like, again, a short fuse. I mean, if you have a coworker that is stressed out, it's never a good thing. We don't hope that our boss comes in, in the morning. We don't say, boy, I hope they're in a bad mood today because they're stressed. It's usually not a good thing. Stress does usually not cause good things, especially when it comes to the emotional symptoms. So again, yeah, you're coming in with things like headaches, panic attacks, tension in all of our muscles, and then even cognitively. And this is important again at work, in the workplace. If you've ever watched a game show, this is probably one of the best examples. We're sitting at home comfortably on our couch, but that contestant is under hot lights. They've got a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress. And so the answer may be clear as day to us at home, and we might be screaming at our television, and frustrated that they can't see the answer or don't know the answer. But because of some of those changes, we have trouble thinking. We have trouble focusing and concentrating, and that's part of, again, the way our brain is wired in response to stress. Again, when we're running away from an animal and afraid of being attacked, generally we're not going to be solving a crossword puzzle. We actually move without thinking. The very primitive part of our brain takes over, and the cortical part that does all the complex thinking basically shuts down. And again, even in a chronic stress situation, sometimes we have trouble focusing, having trouble thinking. So again, that's one of the reasons we want to try to eliminate stress in all of our daily activities, but especially when we're working. We don't want it to affect the type of work that we do and the quality of work that we do. And when a couple of you mentioned, things like fatigue. When we have stress, when we experience this stress, and especially when it's drawn out in more of a chronic state, and it lasts longer like it's not supposed to, it really can take a toll on us. I mean, the early on we may experience that as fatigue because it really drains our energy. It takes a lot of work to to be stressed and to engage those systems for a long period of time, because, like I said, they're not supposed to be engaged for very long. So it can lead to fatigue, but it can eventually lead to illness. It can cause a lot of various different complications and a lot of different diseases, and really can lead to a premature death if somebody experiences enough stress over a period of time. So we want to really try to manage this stress, and for our health's sake. And again, we don't want to. We can't eliminate it, and we really don't necessarily want to eliminate stress. We actually need stress to live. Our body responds to stress. Think of a sensory deprivation. Our senses, what we perceive as a sensation is really a form of stress, and our body needs that. Our body reacts to that. Our muscles react to gravity. A newborn baby doesn't have a lot of strength, barely can hold its head up. But over time, because of the stress of gravity, it's able to get stronger and function and even the way our blood circulates in our body depends on gravity. So we do need to have a certain amount of stress. And in the workplace, this is one of my favorite charts because I use this a lot when I go to businesses. This human performance curve shows you the effect on stress and our productivity or our performance. As stress increases, well, if we start at the left and we have no stress, people get bored. People don't really function well. They don't have enough to do, and they get distracted. They lose their focus, and they're very unproductive. But as the stress continues to increase, we actually see an increase in their performance, and they have more energy, they have better focus, they work better. And now we reach a point where we are working at our best, where we have this peak performance or optimal performance, because if the stress continues to pile on, we get into a situation where the stress is too much and it's overwhelming, and it starts to affect our health. It starts to affect our energy, and this is when you'll see people start to experience burnout. And we refer to this as distress. The other side of the chart we actually refer to as eustress. It's EUSTRESS, and that eustress is I'm sorry, the middle section, that eustress. Not to the left, not where it says calm, but the stress could read eustress. This is a positive stress. This is a favorable stress, and this is really not only at work, and again, when I speak to companies, this is what we want to focus on, but even at home. Even in your daily life, even in the things that you need to do at home, you really want to try to keep your stress level manageable, where you have enough activity and have enough stress in your life to keep you going, but you don't want it to become overwhelming so that it compromises your performance and productivity and your health. So this chart here just gives us an idea of what we're shooting for, and we want to really try to stay in that middle section in that eustress area. Now, to do that, there's various strategies. There's a lot of different strategies that we can use to manage stress or to reduce stress. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. These are some, when I speak about stress just in general, we talk about some of these different strategies that you see on the chart there. And they include things like, talking to your friends and your family, making sure you're getting enough sleep, getting a massage or going to the chiropractor, using breathing techniques, and all of those are good. But some people actually resort to eating to manage stress. They resort to alcohol or drugs or medication, and those are less healthy options and less healthy alternatives. So we definitely want to stay away from those types of things. So it's better to focus on these things here. But for today, our purpose is and our focus is going to be on exercise and how we can use exercise to help us manage the stress that we experience. Now, when I speak, the name of my company and the kind of the umbrella that I speak about is called Fitness for the Rest of Us, because I'm constantly reminding people that fitness isn't just about sweat, six-packs, and sex appeal. The purpose of fitness is really about having more energy, functioning effectively, and being productive at whatever you do. And so again, I speak to a lot of different organizations, and again, I remind people you don't have to be an athlete. Sometimes we combine or we associate fitness with athleticism, and that isn't necessarily true. There are a lot of athletes who really are not fit and not very healthy, and the opposite is true. There are a lot of healthy people out there that aren't necessarily very healthy, but like I said, they have a good fitness level for their station in life. They're able to do the things that they need to do during all of their daily activities with enough energy and enough the appropriate function to be productive. So again, and if you are out of shape, this is even more of a reason to exercise, because stress is going to be even more of a challenge for you, and all of the other factors with being sedentary and things like that come into play. So exercise is always a good idea, but we want to have a strategy in place to focus on specifically what we want to get out of it, and that's important, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Again, generally, exercise increases your overall health and promotes effective body functions. In a nutshell, it really just helps the body do the things that the body is supposed to be doing. When we exercise, there's this interaction between all of the systems of the body, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the respiratory system, the musculoskeletal system. All of these things work together and coordinate, and the more that they do that, the better coordination and the better synchronization that they have. But when we don't exercise, they don't have as much of an opportunity to work together, so there's a little bit of a disconnect and there's a little bit of a challenge, so that when we encounter stressful situations, our body's not ready for it. Our body's not used to doing that. But when we exercise and we give our body this challenge, our body gets some practice, basically, in helping deal with that challenge, and there's this healthy adaptation that takes place in response to the stress of exercise, so that the ability of the body to handle that improves. So we're basically helping the body function better, and in doing that, improving the body's ability to manage stress. Because exercise itself is a stressor. We talked about when I was talking earlier on about stress and what causes stress, I referred to stressors. Exercise is one of those stressors. It puts stress on the body, but it does it in a controlled fashion. And this, again, this is what promotes a healthy adaptation, because we are choosing what we do when we exercise, how much and how long we do it. We give our body an opportunity to respond to that by, again, adapting and getting stronger, faster, better, so that we can so that the next time we encounter that challenge, we can handle it a little bit better. So this, again, also helps build a resistance against other stressors that we encounter, and that's the main reason we want to talk about exercise, and because we have this overall improvement that takes place. Now, some of the different effects that exercise has on stress, one of them is when we exercise regularly, and again, we have this controlled challenge, it builds us a resiliency. One of the things we see is that there's a decrease in nervous tension. There's a release of tension and anxiety. So after we exercise, there's actually this measurable decrease. They've actually tested this, where they can actually measure the decrease in the electrical activity that's taking place in the muscles. So you'll see that after exercise for a short time, people are less tense and less jittery, less nervous, because of the response to that activity that they've performed. So exercising on a regular basis helps our body perform these functions, and the more we perform these functions, the better our body gets at doing them. It's just like anything that we do. The more often we do something, we get practice at doing it. We improve our skill, and there's less energy that we need to put into doing it. And that's basically what happens with exercise, with the specific exercise we're doing, but also in how we manage stress. One of the other things that happens when we exercise is that there is a change in the hormones. There's this interaction with hormones and neurotransmitters that mediate our moods and our emotions. The best known of these are what we call endorphins, and this is the substance that our body produces that hear sometimes people talk about a runner's high. Now, you don't have to run to experience a runner's high, and you don't have to experience a high to receive some benefit from it. These people that talk about experiencing runner's high after a lengthy class or a long exercise or a long run, they're getting a lot of this neurotransmitter, a lot of these endorphins, and so that it's noticeable. And but that's not something we necessarily need to strive for. We don't really have to notice it. You know, it produces so much of it that it has that much of an effect on us. Long before we feel it, we're benefiting from it. You know, long before we start to notice it, it's having an effect on our body and improving our health and improving our moods and things like that. So when we experience these this production of endorphins in our system, it lowers the symptoms that are associated with even mild depression and anxiety. So this can help us with our stress and tension. It actually raises our moods. It elevates and stabilizes our moods. And the nice thing about this is this can actually last for an hour and a half to 2 hours after we exercise. So we're not just going to experience this this benefit in how we feel right after or right after exercise or during our exercise. It actually is going to last for a little while. We also produce another chemical, another hormone called oxytocin, and oxytocin is something that actually counteracts the effects of cortisol, which is one of the stress hormones. When I showed you the slide on the sympathetic nervous system and how that acts, two of the chemicals that are dumped into our system when we're stressed with the sympathetic nervous system are adrenaline and cortisol. And again, when we're stressed, when we have an acute stress, these are definitely things we want in our system because they're going to help us react and help us get away from danger. But if we're not in danger, we don't want them in our system. They're very abrasive, they're very harmful, very destructive. And so this cortisol, anything we can do to rid our body of too much cortisol is a good thing. So the oxytocin that we produce when we exercise can counteract the effects of cortisol. And so again, that's something we want to strive for. Another thing that happens when we exercise, and this isn't really well understood, but when we exercise, we actually see an improvement in our sleep. And this is a good thing because sleep is often disrupted by stress, anxiety, and depression. And if we're able to sleep better, getting enough rest is going to provide us more energy during the day to help us deal with any stress that we come across. So we'll be able to better manage it. So again, when we exercise, we have actually an increase in energy and a reduction in fatigue. And this is hard to explain to people sometimes because, again, a lot of my patients would complain of having stress, and one of the things they would talk about would be about how they felt so tired. And I would tell them, well, maybe you need to try some exercise. And they would look at me and say, aren't you listening to me? I just said I was tired. Why do you want me to go out and exercise? Well, again, it's a hard thing to kind of understand, but by exercising, we're actually going to decrease that amount of fatigue and increase our energy and build up a tolerance against the effects of stress. We talked about before about the way we think. When we exercise, we have an enhanced cognitive function. It improves our alertness, it improves our concentration, and this is in part because of the hormones and the chemicals our body produces, but also just the increase in blood flow. When we exercise and our heart starts pumping and starts moving blood along, everything really benefits from that. You know, our skin, all of our different tissues, and our brain. So it's good to just kind of get everything pumped, get that heart beating and pumping when we exercise. You know, a lot of people, as I mentioned before, you know, fitness isn't about sweat, six packs, and sex appeal. A lot of people associate exercise with sweat, but sweat really is more based on heat. I mean, you could actually be outside on a hot day doing nothing and sweating, but working pretty vigorously on a cold day and not breaking a sweat. But your heart rate is what we want to concentrate on because that helps us gauge our intensity. But again, when that heart is beating, everything is benefiting a little bit better because the heart is actually increasing the amount of blood that's circulating through our system. Another thing that exercise does for us is it gives us the opportunity to be more mindful. And when we talk about mindfulness, this is just focusing on things, just paying attention to things. So when we exercise, this is something you have to work at. When you exercise, you want to focus on the exercise that you're doing and the movement of your body. So you want to go with the rhythm and flow of the exercise and relax your mind, and allow exercise to become a healthy diversion from all of the things that might be causing you some stress. And it actually creates a sedative effect. Now, you don't want to be distracted while you're exercising. That's how injuries happen. So you still want to be maintaining, thinking about what you're doing, but focusing on the actual movements and things like this. And this is something, again, especially when you're dealing with stress. A lot of people, when they exercise, really, they just want to move the weights around, or they just want to do the activity. But we want to pay attention to what our body is doing, especially when it comes to stress. This is what we mean by mindfulness, increasing that focus, and allowing us to get a temporary break from the worries and concerns of our day. Now, I'm not going to say forget about your worries and concerns, because we need to deal with things. Sometimes when we forget about things, they become a bigger problem. So we just want to take a break from them. And as this becomes a better practice, a regular practice, it becomes easier. And now the body has a habit on focusing on what we're doing, because right now the body actually is more focused on the stress that we're experiencing. And the more that we do that, the stronger that attachment becomes. When we focus on exercise and focus on what we're doing, we actually create new pathways, and it becomes easier and easier to, again, take a break from the stress and focus on our activity, and then again, because of this, increase our energy and actually become more optimistic. Now, the picture here on the screen is actually a labyrinth. A lot of people look at that and they say that's a maze. There's a subtle distinction between a labyrinth and a maze. A maze is something that you enter and has dead ends. Around Halloween, a lot of times there's corn mazes and things like that. You can go in and you'll walk through the maze and you'll actually come to a dead end. A labyrinth, on the other hand, is something that actually is designed to allow you to walk through and focus on what you're thinking about, but without having to focus on where you're going. Because if you go through a labyrinth, you'll find your way eventually. You just have to keep following the path, and you'll get to your destination. You won't see a dead end in a labyrinth. So that's just a little bit of trivia for you today. If you learn absolutely nothing throughout the hour of this webinar, you can tell everybody you learned the difference between a labyrinth and a maze. Another thing that exercise does for us is that it builds our self-confidence and our self-worth. Because when you have an opportunity to take better care of yourself and improve your health and well-being, it gives you a sense of an improved sense of control over your body and your life. And so we're better able to deal with our challenges. We're less anxious and depressed. And so when we see people start to go to a gym or a fitness center or start to take a certain exercise class, a lot of times you'll see this noticeable improvement in their self-esteem and their confidence. We also, when we exercise, it builds discipline, and because it promotes organization and planning. And these skills can carry over into all of your other activities, both at work, at home. So when we're exercising, we're learning different things. We're putting certain things into practice that we can, again, carry over into the rest of our lives. And exercise also is very often the first step toward overall wellness, an overall improvement in how we focus and what the things that we do to take care of ourselves. Lastly, and probably most importantly, when we exercise, especially for our purpose today, it alters our perception of stress. The stressors won't change, but our perception of them will change. And that's really what happens when we go to a gym or join a fitness center. Say you pick up a 25-pound dumbbell. It might be heavy at first, but as you do exercises with that dumbbell, you get stronger and it seems lighter. the dumbbell still weighs 25 pounds, but your body has adapted, and so your perception of that weight is that it feels lighter. And again, this carries over into the other stressors that we experience. So we have this, again, this altered, improved perception of the stress in our lives because of the resiliency that our body is gaining when we exercise. And so again, one of the main reasons we want to always include exercise as part of our stress management and our wellness program. Now, how do we get started? The first thing we want to do always when we start an exercise program is to check with your doctor if you have any serious health concerns or if you've been away from exercise for a long time, just to make sure there are no reasons you shouldn't be doing certain things or staying away from any certain activities. And you also want to, if you're confused about what to do, and you can go over this with your doctor, but you can also go over this with one of the personal trainers at Keystone, is they can help you go through what we call a physical activity readiness questionnaire, just to see where you're at and if there are any concerns that we need to worry about, and maybe have a doctor get some doctor's advice before we start the program, because we certainly don't want to compromise our health when we exercise. You know, the whole point of going to a gym like Keystone Health Club is to improve our health, and we don't want to do anything that would cause a problem. So we start off by making sure that we're ready to do that, that we're prepared to do that. Now, we talked about this at the last webinar, so I'm just going to talk about it briefly, but you want to establish a vision, set SMART goals, and create a plan. And this, again, by doing this, it's going to make this whole process less stressful. Because if you plan, if you plan in anything, if you have a plan, you're going to eliminate a lot of the stress and reduce a lot of the stress. So you want to have a vision. In this case, our vision is that we want to be less stressful and have more energy. This is different than somebody who comes to Keystone Health Club that's training for the Pittsburgh Marathon. So they're going to be training differently than us. So if our goal is to use exercise to manage stress, we need to put blinders on. And we have to make sure that our vision doesn't get corrupted by the people around us. And I see this happen a lot of times at different gyms. We want to stay focused on what we want to get out of exercise and not let other people influence us and especially intimidate us in thinking that we're not working hard enough. Because when it comes to stress management, it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different type of exercise, a whole different philosophy than people who are training for competitive events like a marathon. We also want to set, again, like I said, SMART goals that are aligned with our vision and keep us on track. And then we want to come up with a plan. And this is very important, because when we come up with our plan for exercise, this is going to include managing our time and scheduling our day so that we're able to do the chores and meet the obligations that we have to meet during the day and still allow time to exercise. So that means if you have children, you're going to have to work around that or include them, and so your exercise might be doing something that you can do together. Or if your schedule doesn't allow you to walk for 30 minutes straight, you want to maybe in your plan make sure that you walk for 10 minutes at 3 different times during the day. And that actually may be sometimes even a better plan, because when we exercise throughout the day, it becomes more of a part of our lifestyle. One of the dangers of exercising, not physical dangers, but obstacles, I guess I should say, is that sometimes we think that hour in the gym, we look at that as the whole, and we forget about the rest of our day. And so we sit at our desk too much, we come home and we watch television, and that hour at the gym isn't enough to overcome all of that other time that we're sedentary. So we want to break that up as much as possible. Even if you are coming to the club and exercising for an hour or so, we want to make sure that you still are doing other things throughout the rest of your day to stay active and to stay physically active. The other thing that we want to do is make sure that we start small. Again, we don't want to add any stress to our day. We don't want to add any stress to our bodies. We don't want to add any stress to our thoughts. And so not only is our body not ready to exercise if we haven't been exercising, but our schedule isn't ready. And we're just coming out of the new year where everybody made New Year's resolutions, and I think that's one of the reasons people bite off more than they can chew. The novelty of doing everything, they want to exercise for so long, they really kind of forget that they only have 24 hours in a day, because that's the thing. People think, well, I have 24 hours in a day, I should be able to exercise for an hour or two. Well, you really don't have 24 hours in a day. If you're sleeping 8 hours and working 8 hours, well, now you're only down to about 8 hours or so. Less than that if you factor in commuting and, again, if you have children and you have different things to do at home. So you really are trying to fit that hour or two of exercise into maybe 2 or 3. And so start small. Start with maybe 10 or 15 minutes and get that into your daily routine, your daily schedule. So, come down to Keystone and work out for a little bit, but turn around and go back to and meet the obligations that you have. And then once you have that into your daily routine, then start spending a little bit more time there. But the other thing to do is to put it on your schedule and make it a priority. Just like today, you scheduled this webinar for 12 noon and were able to show up on time and participate. You want to do that with exercise. You don't want to just say, I'm going to go to the gym tonight after work. That's too vague, and you might end up staying too late at work or have other things that run into time. And before you know it, you're getting ready for bed, and you think, oh, I forgot I wanted to go to the gym today. But if you say, I'm going to go to the gym at 6 o'clock, you're more likely to show up at the gym at 6 o'clock. So, like I said, make it a priority and put it on your schedule. And this also allows you to build up your fitness level gradually. Again, that novelty and excitement can actually lead to not only problems with your schedule, but can lead to overtraining and injury. It's kind of people sometimes have a hard time thinking about that concept of overtraining. They think that's somebody who spends hours and hours at the gym, but if you're not used to exercising, you can actually overtrain very early on in the process. And this just adds more stress. So start with moderate activity, like a brisk walking, and then gradually introduce more vigorous activity into your routine as you get into better shape. And start with an activity that you enjoy. There's so many different types of physical activity and exercise that can improve our fitness, and Keystone has a whole bunch of different classes and a variety of different activities that you can participate in, so you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. If you have friends, you probably don't have the same taste that they do. So if they like something, doesn't necessarily mean you will. So try to find some things that you like to do, because this will increase your ability to handle stress better. Not just any exercise will do. You want to make it sure that it's something that you can actually continue. And if you make it something that you're interested in and that you enjoy and have fun with, you're more likely to continue. And then as you work your way along, you want to make sure you include some diversity. You want to balance your activity so that it includes resistance exercises, cardiovascular exercises, balance, flexibility, and coordination activities. And you also want to change your routine occasionally so that you can avoid overtraining and have a more comprehensive program to improve your outcome. The more it's when I speak to children, when I go to schools, I always use the example of crayons, because the more crayons we have, the more likely we are to color the things that are on the paper. And the more types of exercise you do, the more likely you're going to meet your fitness requirements. If you just run, or you just do yoga, or you just do Zumba, you not only run the risk of injuring yourself and overusing certain parts of your body, but there's other parts of your body that don't get attention. And there's runners are notorious for having certain muscles that are tight because they don't stretch. Bodybuilders do certain exercises, and again, often don't have a good cardiovascular fitness and have, again, the same problems with tight muscles and things like that. So we want to make sure we have a lot of diversity in our workout program. And we want to make sure, again, with our goal, with our vision of managing stress through exercise, we don't want to exercise too hard, and we don't want to exercise for too long. Exercise that's too intense or lasts too long can actually increase those cortisol levels. After about 40 or 45 minutes of more vigorous, especially intense exercise, we actually start to produce cortisol. And this is a problem for a lot of people because one of the side effects of cortisol is fat production. So there's a lot of people who are struggling with weight and trying to lose fat who exercise faithfully, but in reality are actually exercising too much, and it's actually beneficial for them to take a step back and peel back a little bit so that they're actually exercising less. We don't need to be screaming and throwing weights around and pounding our chest and having that no pain, no gain mentality. Sometimes you walk past a gym and it sounds like a zoo. Low to moderate intensity exercise is the best for managing stress. We want to practice control and discipline when we exercise, especially when it comes to managing stress. We also want to make sure that we take a break from exercise periodically. It's good to be physically active every day, but we don't necessarily need to exercise every day. There's a difference. So once per week is, 1 day a week is probably a good idea to take off a day or so a week, and maybe a couple of days every month. And each year, maybe even take a couple of weeks off of exercise, because we have to remember that some of the benefits of exercise happen when we're not exercising. That's when our body repairs and rebuilds and adapts. And again, there's this problem of overtraining, which can lead to injury, but there's also sometimes even if we don't experience overtraining, we just don't give our body the ability to respond to the exercise that we're doing. So we want to make sure that we give ourselves that chance. And so we want to use this time for other stress management techniques, or to read and study about health and wellness and fitness, or evaluate your progress. I see people a lot of times at the gym, and they carry around notebooks or they carry around some sort of journal to record the things that they're doing, but nobody ever goes back and looks at those things. And our days off, that hour that we would maybe be exercising, or 45 minutes that we would be exercising, or 30 minutes that we would be exercising, on the days we don't exercise, take that time and sit down and maybe look over that journal and look over those things and evaluate your progress and see maybe what types of exercise have benefited you the most, or what type of program that you've been doing. Maybe if you plateaued, maybe things that you can change up, or read about new and different techniques that you haven't experienced before. But like I said, it's never a problem to take a day or so off from exercise every once in a while. We don't want to become obsessed with exercise. Now, when it comes to the different types of exercise, as we kind of round things out here and finish up, always keep in mind, as I said before, the purpose of it. Well, I may not have said this before. I say it often, but I tell people again, when we exercise, we want to make sure that we're challenging our body, not punishing it. And especially when it comes to fitness for stress management and for general fitness. If you're an athlete and you're getting paid a lot of money to risk your body, then it might be worth taking those risks. But really, for the rest of us, it's not a good idea to really put our bodies on the line, and there's really no additional benefit from that. Some of the things people do might make the difference between a gold and silver medal in the Olympics, but for me and you, it's really not necessary to go that far with it. So again, keep in mind we want to challenge but not punish. So some general things to keep in mind as we're trying to think of different things to exercise. First of all, don't exercise at your desk or in your office. When I read an article that has different exercise tips in it, and it says something like, 5 exercises that you can do at your desk, the first thing that pops into my head is, here's an article that I can throw in the trash, because they don't get it. The desks are for working. Desks are not for eating. Desks are not for doing anything else. Desks are for working. So make sure you focus on what you're supposed to do. Get your work done at your desk. And then when it comes time to exercise and take a break, which you should do periodically through the day, get away from that desk, get as far away from it as you can, and find a more relaxing environment that doesn't involve work. Go outside if you can, and get away from whatever makes you think work-related thoughts, and especially if our vision is stress management. We need to give ourselves a break and come back with fresh eyes and renewed energy, and allow ourselves to be rejuvenated. But working throughout the day and staying at that desk is not a good idea. You want to get away from it as often as possible. So you don't want to add any exercise activities that keep you in your chair. You also want to find an activity that suits your personality. If you work with a lot of people, you may want to exercise alone or with a partner or in a small group. If you spend a lot of time alone, well, then you might like to be in a larger group. So again, there's no one answer. Everybody's different, but try to figure out what you think would work best for you. Also, especially when we talk about stress management, avoid overcrowded classes, abrasive instructors, or any environment that's going to be counterproductive to our vision of managing stress. One of the things that I see a lot of times, I've run into people, I've even had patients who, were in a rush and all haggard, and because they were trying to get to a yoga class that was supposed to relax them. That shouldn't be the case. We want to make sure that as part of our plan, we schedule a class that we can get to in a reasonable time so that we're not fighting traffic and increasing our stress to go to something that's supposed to be benefiting us. So along those lines, we want to schedule our day around exercise. We don't want to really try to fit exercise into our day as much as we want to fit the rest of our day around different times that we can exercise. Again, allow enough time for these different activities and make sure that you're spreading things out and having a home strategy, a work strategy, and a gym strategy if possible, so that you're getting exercise throughout the day, because the more you make that part of your day and the more that becomes part of your personality, the more likely you are to stick with it and the more likely you are to benefit from it. The more likely that you are to benefit from it. So now specifically, what exercises? Start with one and build from there. So let's talk a little bit about resistance exercises. Resistance exercises are when activities that allow us to contract our muscles and then relax them. And we've found, studies have shown that contracting and relaxing muscles signals the release of these neurotransmitters and has been shown to buffer the response of the cardiovascular system to stress. So what that means is that it prepares our body. The challenge of lifting that weight or stretching that tubing or doing a push-up again, prepares our body for the different stressors, psychological stressors and emotional stressors that we might encounter. And it also improves our mental health. So again, we can use things like free weights. We can use some of the machines down at Keystone. We can also use resistance tubing, or we can just find a place on the floor and, again, use our body weight and do things like push-ups and lunges and chin-ups. Those are all good exercises. Now, there's also cardiovascular exercises, aerobic exercises, or cardiometabolic exercises, whatever you want to call it. But these are things that there's various different dance types of activities, cycling types of activities, running or biking or swimming, and these have been shown to improve our body's reaction to stress. We found people who participate in cardiovascular or aerobic type of activities, and this is probably one that you want to make sure you include. I mean, all forms of exercise have the potential, if you use them right. I mean, again, somebody who's running for training for a marathon and running isn't necessarily going to improve their health. It has to be part of your plan and your vision. But if that's part of your plan and your vision, you're more likely to see an improvement in how you handle stress. And what we see is these people who participate regularly in activities like this don't have the jump in heart rate activity. Their heart doesn't pound as much when they encounter stress. Their pulse rate, their blood pressure doesn't go up so much. They also have a quicker recovery time after that they've experienced that stress, because their body's used to it, because when they go to these classes, they, again, have a controlled challenge that their body adapts and responds to, and so when they encounter other forms of stress, they're better able to deal with it. So again, these can be, again, various dance types of things that have choreographed steps which help you increase your focus and concentration. Now, again, we don't have to get too difficult. One of my pet peeves is that a lot of times people try to get too cute and too fancy, but when you start to
start to do that, you also increase the chances of injuring yourself, and you start to lose some of the exercise benefit. So you don't have to get too complicated with these things. But this can also include things like running or biking, which have kind of a rhythmic thing to them. As we're running, there's you can actually set a different pace, and that can help you focusing on that rhythm or that pace of your feet or the pedals can actually help you be more mindful. And one of the best things as far as being mindful when it comes to exercise is swimming. If you have the opportunity to swim, you're really isolated there because you can't really hear anything when you're in the water, and you really have much fewer distractions. And so, again, swimming is also a good choice. But any of those, again, aerobic, cardio types of activities are really beneficial, and probably one you want to put a star by, because if you do nothing else, this is something to make sure that you include. And then there's also different balance, flexibility, and coordination activities like Pilates and yoga, Tai Chi, and even just stretching by itself. Stretching, when people think about stretching, they think that's something that you do before you exercise. But stretching should actually be part of your exercise program by itself. It's actually something that's a workout in itself. Because when you stretch, we call it stretching, but we're not really physically stretching the muscles as much as we're relaxing muscles that are too overactive and too tense. So things like yoga and Tai Chi that especially incorporate mindfulness and breathing techniques and calmness and allow us to experience this progressive mental relaxation takes us even further than just simple stretches. Not that simple stretches are bad, but when we incorporate some of these other activities in there, we get some additional benefits from it. So I think it's good. Ideally, I think it's good to have a few of these activities. Maybe one day of resistance training, the next day do some cardio, the next day do some balance, flexibility, and coordination like yoga, Tai Chi, or stretching, and then take a day off and then start all over again. Or do maybe half of your workout be resistance and the other half be cardio, and then the next day be half cardio, half stretching, balance, coordination. But you can play around and kind of make your own program, whatever suits you, whatever works best for you, and incorporate that into your day. There's also recreational activities that we can do. Now, I warn people to stay away from competitive sports. But you can definitely play tennis or basketball in a non-competitive way, and just to get that physical activity. Because again, once you get competitive, we start to try hard. We start to sometimes increase tension. Sometimes fights even break out. And fitness and wellness isn't a contest. Sports are not necessarily exercise, and exercise is definitely not a sport. So if this is something you want to incorporate into your program, it is a good idea, but like I said, I caution people against becoming too competitive, even with things like golf, because the minute you try to hit that ball a little bit further or shave a few strokes off your score, you risk increasing the amount of tension and stress that you experience. Just go out and have fun with those things. And lastly, be careful with combat types of exercise like martial arts or boxing or kickboxing, because aggression promotes aggression. Anger promotes anger. And these things can be good for improving your your ability to defend yourself. But I think it's important to embrace the practice of discipline that's promoted by the martial arts and avoid anger. And definitely you don't want to be hitting a punching bag and pretending it's your boss, because you're actually going to increase your stress level. Hit that punching bag and think of anything but your boss. And take out your your energy, not necessarily your aggression, but again, when we exercise, we want to not only, especially when it comes to stress management, we not only want to focus on what our body's doing, but we also want to be concentrating and very aware of what our mind is doing at the same time. And again, being aggressive or being angry is not what we want to try to is not where we want to be when it comes to stress management. So I hope I've given you some some ideas, and explained a little bit about how stress affects your body and your mind, and made that connection between exercise and stress relief, and gave you some tips and maybe some ideas and some strategies to move forward and utilize a gym like Keystone Health Club. If you are not a member of Keystone Health Club, I hope that you'll consider joining, or at least checking out the club and paying it a visit and seeing if it would fit your needs. If you're already a member of Keystone Health Club, I hope that you'll take advantage of all the many classes and resources and opportunities that there are to improve your health and wellness and manage your stress. So I just want to finish with one comment. That I hope that you remember that the best time to exercise and manage your stress and take better care of yourself was before. The next best time, though, is right now. So I hope, I gave you some strategies and tips that will get you started, and keep in mind that the worst time to do these things is later. So take some of these things, take some of this information, and get started as soon as possible. If I can ever serve as a resource along with Keystone Health Club, I hope that you'll consider it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you down the road.